The fairy lights twinkled like fireflies caught in glass jars, strung delicately across the beams of our sunlit living room. Everything smelled faintly of roses and sugared lemon cake. Pale pink tissue paper peeked from gift bags arranged like trophies on the table. The walls echoed with warm laughter. My friends, my cousins, co-workers I hadn't seen in months. I was 8 months pregnant and radiant in theory, but heavy and swollen in reality, wearing the silky blush dress Erin picked out for me online. It clung in all the wrong places, especially under my arms, and the zipper pinched the small of my back, but I smiled anyway. Because today was supposed to be beautiful. Today was for us. Erin clinked a spoon against his champagne flute, commanding, the room with the effortless charm that first pulled me in years ago. He wore a navy button-down, sleeves rolled, hair slightly tousled, the way women notice. He glanced at me and smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. I want to say something, he began, raising his glass. Phones came out. People. Hushed. I just want to thank everyone for being here. And, of course, my wife. Look at her, glowing, strong, dedicated. He paused, waiting for polite chuckles. Truly, the perfect vessel to bring our daughter into the world. Laughter. Nervous, scattered. But the word, vessel. It knocked the breath out of me. My smile held, but my stomach didn't. The room blurred at the edges. I heard my friend Julia clear her throat and shift in her seat. Someone snorted behind me, and I prayed it was just an awkward laugh, not pity. Erin took a sip of champagne and sat down as if he'd just delivered a heartfelt speech. I placed a trembling hand on my belly, as if to shield my daughter from the hollowness blooming inside me. I didn't eat much after that. I faked a headache, let others clean up. By nightfall, the house was silent again. Just wrapping paper on the floor and a half-empty bottle of sparkling cider sweating on the counter. Erin was on his laptop in the living room, scrolling, grinning at something on the screen. He didn't look up when I walked in. What was that today? I asked softly. My voice cracked on the last word. What? He muttered, eyes still fixed on the glow of the screen. That toast. Calling me a vessel? He finally glanced at me. It was a joke. You're taking it too seriously. I stared at him. At the man I'd built a life with. The man who, just a year ago, whispered poetry into my neck and promised to love every part of me. Do you even see me anymore? I asked, more to the room than to him. He groaned, shut his laptop. God, everything is so dramatic with you lately. You're hormonal, Mia. Just rest. We've got a lot ahead. Then he got up and walked past me. No touch, no apology. Just the scent of his cologne lingering as he disappeared into the guest room. I stood in the silence. Later, I found myself in the nursery, our daughter's nursery, alone. The crib wasn't finished. The wallpaper peeled at the edge. Her name, scribbled on a vision board I made months ago, felt foreign now. I sat on the floor, legs crossed under the weight of my belly. My wedding ring sparkled under the dim light, resting on my finger like a lie. Was this what I was now? A function? A womb with a name tag? I tried to remember the last time Erin looked at me, really looked, with love, not duty. I couldn't. The word vessel replayed in my mind, like a curse, and I realized something had cracked open. A small, dangerous thought whispered, what if this isn't temporary? What if this is who he really is? The thought didn't go away. We met on a Thursday evening in October, beneath a skylight that spilled pale amber light across polished concrete floors. I was curating a photography exhibition downtown. Stark, intimate portraits of women taken by other women. The kind of art that made people shift uncomfortably, linger longer than they meant to. He arrived near the end of the opening, walking in with a casual confidence that felt practiced. Tall, with a navy coat slung over one shoulder and a glass of white wine in his hand before he even said hello. You curated this? He asked, pausing in front of a photograph of a woman mid-laugh, her face half-lit. I nodded. Yes, he tilted, his head. It feels honest. There's something timeless about it. Then he looked at me and added, like you. I should have rolled my eyes. Instead, I smiled. I remember the warmth in my cheeks and the strange, fluttering thrill of being seen. Aaron had a way of making you feel chosen, not just noticed, selected, like a rare book or a song that only he understood. He said I had an old soul, that I was unlike anyone he'd ever met. And when someone smart, articulate, and handsome says that to you at just the right time in your life, when you're tired of dating apps and empty texts and one-sided efforts, you believe them. Our first few months were heady and golden. Late-night Thai food, museum dates, long walks in the rain where he'd pull my coat tighter around me like I was something precious. And when he asked me to move in, I said yes, without hesitation. I started spending fewer hours at the gallery, told myself I needed balance. Why work so hard? He'd ask, stretching across our unmade bed on a Sunday morning. Let me take care of things. Focus on what matters. I began letting go of small things. My studio space, the monthly art collective I used to lead. He told me compromises were part of love, sacrifices we made for each other. And I wanted that so badly. To believe we were building something sacred, a life stitched together with shared dreams and late-night whispers. But even then, there were signs. Quiet, easy to overlook. The way he'd correct me in front of friends, laughing as he did it, like I was the punchline to a harmless joke. Or how he'd bristle when I went to events without him. I just don't like the idea of you out there alone, he'd say, cupping my face as though concern made it romantic. He grew distant whenever I succeeded. When one of my artists was featured in a magazine, when a piece I helped curate sold to a major collector. You're becoming one of those gallery girls, he said once, his voice flat, the kind who forgets what real life is. Still, I defended him, to friends, to my mother. He's just intense, I'd say. He wants us to be a team. But I wasn't on a team. I was an accessory. I remember one night in particular, I'd stayed late organizing prints for an upcoming exhibition. When I got home, he was furious. Not shouting, just cold. Like I was an inconvenience. You didn't even text, he said, folding his arms. I made dinner. I hadn't asked him to. I apologized, kissed his cheek. I told myself it was sweet that he cared. Then I stopped staying late, and gradually I stopped painting altogether. My days began to revolve around him. His meetings, his schedule, his moods. I started keeping track, not of my own deadlines, but of when he was most likely to be irritable, when he needed quiet, when he needed praise. It was like I'd become the backstage crew in a play he was, starring in. When we got married, I remember standing at the altar with a smile plastered on my face, telling myself I was lucky, that he was loyal, ambitious, handsome, that I was safe, and maybe that was true. I was safe. But I wasn't alive. Pregnancy changed things, or maybe it revealed things that were already there. He was thrilled when we found out. He lifted me off my feet in the kitchen, twirled me like we were in some movie. But the joy wasn't for me. It was for the idea of fatherhood. The image of himself as a dad, holding court at barbecues, giving advice to other men. He read every baby book, bought top-of-the-line monitors and strollers, talked to my belly with an intensity that sometimes made me feel like a bystander. When I asked if I could use part of the guest room as a studio again, just a corner, a small table, he laughed. You'll have your hands full, he said. No time for little projects anymore? Little projects. That night, I sat on the edge of the tub holding a paintbrush I hadn't used in over a year and cried until my ribs ached. Looking back now, I can see how I became a silhouette in my own life, a blur in the background of our story. And maybe he did love me, but not for who I was, only for what I made him feel, admired, in control, adored. My mother said once, "He's not like your father. He doesn't lift you." She was right. He didn't lift me. He watched me put down everything I loved, and he called it partnership. It started with a pop-up on his laptop, just a flicker in the corner of the screen while I was looking for a photo. The one from our anniversary in Big Sur, when we stood on the cliffside and the wind wrapped around us like a blessing. I thought maybe I'd frame it for the nursery, but the photo folder wasn't where I expected it to be. Instead, I found a locked folder tucked deep inside a directory named Something Innocuous. Finance Docs 2019. I clicked out of habit. The system prompted for a password, and I don't know what made me try his mother's maiden name. Maybe instinct? Maybe a sick kind of hope. But it opened, and then everything broke open with it. There were messages, dozens of them, screenshots, saved texts, even photos. Her name was Danielle. Her face was soft-featured, with wide, knowing eyes. She signed her notes with heart emojis and pet names. Miss you. Last night was electric. She doesn't get you like I do. But it wasn't the sweetness that destroyed me. It was the rot beneath it. Messages where he mocked me, called me clingy, cold. Like living with a statue. He wrote, "All she talks about is the baby." Another one. "I feel like I'm drowning in this domestic nightmare." My hands trembled. My vision blurred. I couldn't breathe through the pressure in my chest. I pressed a palm against my swollen belly, as if to shield the baby from this moment. He had sent Danielle a photo of our nursery. Half finished. Paint cans on the floor, stars on the wall. He captioned it, "The prison cell is coming along nicely." Don't remember walking down the stairs, but I remember how the floor felt beneath my feet. Cool, smooth wood that creaked under my weight. He was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove like it was any other night. I held the phone. In front of him, silent, shaking. He didn't flinch. Just glanced down, then away. "You were snooping through my stuff?" he said. I'm sorry. Let me explain. Just that cold, clipped tone like I was the violation." "Who is she?" I whispered, but my voice cracked in the middle, split, open by disbelief. "How long?" he sighed. Actually sighed like I was a burden. "It's not what you think." The phone buzzed in my hand. A new message from her. "Can't wait until it's just us." I turned the screen toward him, his jaw clenched. "Okay, yes, there was something. But it's not like physical. It was emotional. I was lonely. You've changed." I laughed then, a brittle, wild sound I didn't recognize. "I'm growing a human inside me, Aaron. I'm not a changed person. I'm a pregnant woman trying to hold our life together." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I didn't sign up for this. All of this." He waved vaguely. "At the baby things, the house, me. I thought it would feel different. I thought you would be different." And there it was. The ugly truth pulled into the light. He didn't just betray me, he resented me for becoming the very thing he asked for. That night, I moved into the nursery. It smelled like lavender and fresh paint. The crib was still half assembled, its pieces leaned against the wall like a skeleton in waiting. I slept on the floor with a pillow and a blanket from the guest bed, wrapped in silence so loud it roared in my ears. I started crying during the smallest things, brushing my teeth, folding baby clothes, hearing songs we used to dance to. Cried during contractions, long before they meant anything. He left for a work trip 3 days before my due date. Didn't ask how I was feeling, didn't pack lightly either. Took a full suitcase. I didn't ask where he was going. I already knew. He wasn't there when my water broke. I was alone in the kitchen, the smell of burnt toast lingering in the air. I'd been trying to make myself eat. My phone was on the counter. I called a car. Service, not him. The nurse held my hand through most of labor. She had soft eyes and a calming voice, and when she placed my daughter on my chest, I sobbed so hard I thought I might split open. She was perfect, red-faced and wrinkled and furious at the world. And perfect. I named her Lyra, after the constellation. After the old telescope my father gave me when I was a girl, always encouraging me to look up, not in. Aaron arrived hours later, still wearing his wedding ring like it meant something. He held a gift bag with a pink bow on top. Inside was a silver rattle and a stuffed bunny. I watched him hold Lyra for the first time like he was cradling someone else's child, like she was breakable, foreign. He smiled for photos, posted them online. "My girls," he captioned, with heart emojis. At night, he turned his back to me in the hospital cot. When we got home, the performance continued. Friends visited and he played the part. He told stories about the labor like he'd been there. He kissed Lyra's head for the camera, then handed her off to me like she was a prop. I fed her in the dark, alone. I changed her diapers while he caught up on work. One morning, as I burped her against my shoulder, he stood at the doorway with his arms crossed. "I never asked for this much responsibility," he said. He meant the baby. He meant me. And that was when something inside me cracked. Not in a loud, dramatic way. Not like the night I found the messages. This break was quieter, deeper, like the slow splitting of ice on a frozen lake. But beneath the pain, something else stirred, resolve. I looked at Lyra, at her impossibly small fingers curled around mine, at her sleepy face pressed into my chest. And I knew. I would not raise her in the shadow of this man. I would not let her learn that love looks like silence, like sacrifice, like staying small so someone else can feel big. A few nights later, as I nursed her under the blue light of the baby monitor, he stood in the doorway again. "I'm not in love with you anymore," he said. No apology. No hesitation. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just rocked my daughter gently in my arms and whispered to her, "Not him. Never him. You are the light, and I will never let anyone dim you." And in that moment, for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was coming back to myself, slowly, quietly, but undeniably. I didn't leave with a bang. There were no suitcases flung into the night, no dramatic farewell speech echoing through the hallway. I left the way a shadow fades, slow and unnoticed. It was a Tuesday morning. The air held the first sharpness of autumn, that brittle chill that creeps beneath your sleeves and into your bones. I packed only what I could carry: diapers, formula, a few outfits for Lyra, and a backpack with some clothes of mine that no longer fit quite right since the pregnancy. I slipped the photograph from Big Sur into a book of poems. Rilke, his words like breath to me in that time. I left behind my wedding ring, carefully placed on the bathroom sink, a final punctuation mark. Lyra was barely 2 months old. She blinked up at me from her car seat, round and trusting. I whispered, "We're going to start over, baby. Just us." The cabin sat 3 hours north, nestled in the blue hush of the mountains. I'd found it on a message board late one sleepless night, a seasonal rental, listed by an older couple who didn't ask many questions. The key was under the mat. The place was small. 2 rooms, a narrow kitchen, windows streaked with frost. The heat was finicky, the plumbing louder than it should have been. The crib I ordered online came in parts I assembled by hand. The sheets smelled like pine and mothballs. I didn't care. I dropped onto the wooden floor with Lyra in my arms and cried for what felt like hours. It wasn't loud sobbing, more like water leaking from a broken pipe. It came and came and came, quietly, steadily, until I had nothing left but breath and bone. At night, I slept on a mattress beside the crib, one hand always near her. She was my anchor, my witness, my reason to get up when all I wanted was to dissolve. Mornings were hard. There was no one to hand her to, no one to lean on. She cried, I cried. We stumbled through. I made lists to give the day shape: feed, change, rock, breathe. I stopped checking my phone. Eventually, I turned it off. I imagined Aaron pacing in our kitchen, furious. I imagined him telling people I was unstable, dramatic, selfish. Let him. The silence of the cabin became holy. In that stillness, things began to come back to me. Soft, almost reluctant. I found a broken pencil in one of the drawers and started writing again. Letters I'd never send, poems scrawled on the backs of grocery lists and cardboard. One day I found an old roll of brown paper bags under the sink and tore them open. smoothed them out on the floor. I dipped my fingers in charcoal from the fireplace and began to draw messy, chaotic lines. Mostly women. Faces turned away. Hands reaching for something. I didn't recognize them at first. Then I realized they were all versions of me. The day Claire arrived, the wind was howling through the trees. I was outside with Lyra strapped to my chest, trying to figure out how to split kindling without severing my hand. Claire walked up, the slope like she'd done it 100 times. She wore a thick wool coat, boots caked in mud, and a scarf wrapped 3 times around her neck. "I saw the lights on," she said simply. She held out a mason jar of soup. "You'll need this." I didn't speak, just took it with shaking hands. She didn't ask questions. Didn't comment on the baby or my puffy eyes or the ache I carried like a second skin. She looked around the cabin, nodded once, and said, "If you're staying through winter, you'll need to learn how to chop properly. That axe'll ruin your wrist the way you're holding it." And just like that, she returned the next day with gloves and tea. She stood behind me as I raised the axe again, corrected my posture with a firm but gentle touch. Her hands were strong, her eyes tired and kind. Over the weeks, she became my quiet guide. She brought books, canned fruit, taught me to bake bread, and mend baby clothes. We didn't talk much about the past. She told me, one chilly afternoon over coffee, that she'd buried a son and left a husband who blamed her for it. "I know what disappearing looks like," she said, sipping from a chipped mug. "Sometimes it's survival, sometimes it's the beginning." I walked with Lyra in the woods every morning. Leaves crackled beneath our boots. I spoke aloud to her about the trees, the clouds, the shape of her nose. I read her poems. I drew while she slept. The charcoal smudges on my fingertips felt like some quiet badge of return. My body began to feel like mine again. Slowly. I stopped wincing when I looked in the mirror. I touched the stretch marks on my belly and whispered, "Thank you." 1. Night after Lyra had fallen asleep, I lit a candle and sat by the window. Outside, snow had started to fall, the first of the season, each flake a small absolution. I picked up the silver rattle Aaron had given her in the hospital and turned it in my hands. It felt cold, heavy, empty. I opened the window and tossed it into the snow. It made no sound. In the silence that followed, something inside me finally exhaled. I wasn't just surviving, I was beginning again. And this time, I would build something that didn't require me to vanish. There was something sacred about telling the truth in a room where no one knew my name. At first, the blog was just a whisper. I posted under a pseudonym, Hollow Vessel, a bitter little joke only I understood. I wrote late at night while Lyra slept beside me, her tiny body curled into mine like a comma at the end of a long sentence. I didn't know what I was doing, not really. I just knew I needed to speak. I wrote about the moment my body stopped being mine, about the weight of a wedding ring that once symbolized love but became a shackle, about the soft erasure of self. That doesn't come from one blow, but 1,000 quiet cuts. Each post felt like an incision, a surgery. Bleeding out the poison, one paragraph at a time. And then, one day, the comments started. I thought I was the only one. "You put into words what I couldn't say." Please don't stop writing. I wasn't alone. That realization cracked something open in me. Not pain this time, but power. I started signing my pieces with a different name, my own. First, just a first name, then all of it. I bought a notebook and made a list in thick black ink. Lawyer Gallery Lyra's. Name bank account. Me, the lawyer's office smelled like paper and wood polish. I wore the only blazer I had, loose in the shoulders from before the baby. My palms were sweating. She was sharp, young, efficient. She let me cry only once before handing me tissues and starting to build my case like scaffolding. I gave her everything. Screenshots of texts I wasn't supposed to see, emails from Aaron to someone named R, financial records he thought I'd never access. I'd learned to be quiet when I moved through our shared cloud drive. I had years of quiet proof. "You're smart," she said after our third meeting. Most women come to me with nothing but a story. You've got a paper trail and a fire. The fire kept me warm when the nights were long. I opened a new bank account under my full name and moved what little I could scrape from the shared account. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Mine in a way nothing had been in years. One night, I found myself looking up my old gallery, a small space downtown that once held my earliest shows. I hadn't spoken to Nora, the owner, in nearly 3 years. The last time we'd talked, Erin had insisted I turn down her offer to showcase a new collection. "The timing's off," he said, touching my stomach like a claim. "You're about to be a mother, not a starving artist." But I emailed her anyway, a short message. "Do you still hang ghosts?" She replied within the hour. "Only the beautiful ones. Come home." That night, I pulled out every scrap I had, drawings from the cabin, sketches on paper bags, self-portraits painted on salvaged wood. My new medium was anything I could find. I mixed paint with ashes from the fire, with red wine, with dried blood from a cut on my palm I hadn't noticed until it stained the paper. My own DNA in the work, raw and unapologetic. The collection was titled "She Once Was a Vessel." It sold out in 2 weeks. Nora offered me a permanent space. An interview request came next, then a feature in a magazine. I wasn't just reclaiming my name. I was stitching it back into the world, thread by thread. Lyra's birth certificate had his name. I stared at it one morning, my coffee cooling beside me, the light hitting it just right. It looked foreign, like a stamp from a country I never meant to visit. I filed the paperwork, paid the fees, waited. When the new document arrived, Lyra Rose Bennett, I cried in a way I hadn't cried before. Not from grief, from reclamation. In the cabin, I took down the wedding photo I'd once kept folded in a drawer. I burned it in the fire, watched the image curl and blacken. His face disappeared first. Mine lingered, almost defiant, until the heat took it too, ashes into armor. I enrolled in an online business course. Not glamorous, but necessary. I wanted to know how to protect myself, how to grow what I'd started without giving it away again. I learned about trademarks, contracts, leverage. I read case law while feeding Lyra pureed carrots. I whispered affirmations into her soft hair between Zoom classes. Sometimes I would watch Aaron online, clips of him giving motivational talks, polished in a suit, gesturing with his hands the way he always did when trying to seem earnest. He spoke of family, resilience, honoring the mother of your child. The hypocrisy made something rise in my chest, not tears. Purpose. He didn't. Know I was coming, but I was. Steady, silent, like a tide. Claire watched me sometimes from the porch, her hands in her coat pockets, her eyes unreadable. "You're becoming dangerous," she said one afternoon. "That's not a warning, it's a compliment." I smiled for the first time in weeks. I bought perfume again. Not the one Aaron loved, the one he once said made me smell expensive. No, this one was earthy, spiced, fierce. I wore it every day, even if I had nowhere to go. I wore it like war paint. The city smelled the same. Concrete, ambition, the faint trace of roasted chestnuts from a cart that hadn't moved in years. But I wasn't the same. I walked differently. Straighter. Not in defiance, but in ownership. Claire offered to come with me, but I declined. This was something I had to do alone. I chose the cafe carefully, not our old one. No shared ghosts. This one had tall windows, black brick walls, a hush that made everything feel like a confession. I arrived early, ordered peppermint tea. Waited. When he walked in, I didn't stand. He looked thinner, somehow both polished and worn out. The kind of tired that starts behind the eyes. Still handsome, still wrapped in that curated charm, but I saw the fraying edges. He smiled like nothing had changed, moved to hug me. I didn't flinch. He sat across from me, confused by my stillness. Maybe he'd expected anger, tears, some emotional currency he could spend, but I had none left for him. "This is closure, right?" he said, smoothing his tie. "I'm glad you reached out. I've been worried." "You can stop talking now." He blinked, lips parting slightly. that stunned little pause he always had when the script veered off course. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single folder, placed it between us, slowly, calmly. "Everything's here," I said. "The prenup violation, the diverted funds, the hotel receipts, the messages to Rachel, and several others." He looked down, then back up at me. I went through my life," I interrupted. "I went through the wreckage of what you made of it." He opened the folder, skimmed, then closed it too fast, as if the truth might burn through his fingertips. "There's a custody case pending," I continued. "I have a lawyer, a good one. And before you think you can spin this, just know, I've also shared my story." His jaw tightened. "What story?" "The one you tried to erase, the one you twisted into a sermon for your stage, the one where I was a vessel, not a woman." I leaned forward, calm as breath. "You don't get to narrate me anymore." His voice broke the air like a cracked dish. "You're punishing me. You're being cruel." "No," I said, folding my hands. "You were cruel. I'm just cleaning the blood off the floor." He tried again. The pleading, the performance, all familiar notes. "We had something real. Don't throw it away. We have a child." Exactly. "And I will not let her grow up watching a man silence her mother." His shoulders sagged, something in him deflating. I recognized it. The moment a man realizes the control he used like a leash has snapped. I stood, tucked the folder back into my bag. "I suggest you cooperate, quietly, publicly, if necessary." He opened his mouth again. I didn't stay to hear it. That night, I stood outside the gallery in a soft drizzle. The rain wasn't heavy, just enough to make the pavement shine like wet velvet. My name glowed on the wall in gold serif letters. Marin Bennett, Resurrection. The same silk dress clung to my body. The one I'd worn at the baby shower. The one I'd cried in. The one that once felt like a costume. It had been altered now. Shorter, sharper, stitched with new seams and lined in crimson silk. A rebirth. A reclamation. Around my neck, a pendant glinted, molten gold twisted into a small flame. The ring had been melted down, not destroyed. Transformed. Lyra squirmed against my hip, reaching for the lights inside. I kissed her forehead, her soft curls damp with rain. She cooed, pressing her tiny hand against my collarbone, right where the pendant lay. Inside, the gallery buzzed with low conversation and soft jazz. Women moved through the space like shadows and light, pausing at each painting with reverence. They didn't just view the art, they saw themselves in it. I saw them too, their haunted eyes, their cautious hope. Nora waved from across the room, her smile warm. Beside her stood Claire, wearing her usual flannel and a knowing look. I nodded once. She nodded back. At the center of the room hung the final piece, a life-sized portrait of a woman made of fractured mirror shards, her mouth stitched shut with red thread, and yet her eyes blazed. A woman stepped beside me, mid-30s, soft voice. She touched my arm gently. "Thank you," she said, "for writing what you wrote, for painting what you painted. I left my husband last month." I met her gaze. "Then this is your resurrection too." We stood in silence, not needing more words. Later, I walked Lyra to the corner of the gallery where my very first sketch, the charcoal one drawn on a paper bag in the cabin, had been framed. Crude, raw, a woman curled in on herself, shadowed and shaking. But in the corner, a tiny flame flickered near her ribs. I whispered into my daughter's ear. "That was me, but I burned through." She gurgled, reaching out her hand. I let her touch the frame. I didn't smile for revenge. I didn't smile because I'd won. I smiled because I remembered who I was before he rewrote me, and I would never vanish for anyone again.